learning evolution of management in the second chapter. Evolution is very important to know. The historical perspective of management is important as it will help us to know where the concept of management has evolved and how whether the management concepts are still relevant or not. What is the need for knowing the history of management? So, the learning objectives, we will know about the need for studying evolution of management concepts, forces influencing or the factors which are behind the evolution of management practices. We will discuss about the classical perspective, the four perspectives of management, that is classical, behavioral, quantitative and contemporary perspectives of management. The need to study evolution of management. Further, we will discuss forces influencing evolution of management perspectives, overview of the approaches classical, behavioral, quantitative and contemporary. Then we will discuss about the major contributions of management. The learning outcomes, it will enhance the understanding of management perspectives and their application in the present workplace. Need to study evolution of management. Studying history of management is important to match current trends of business perspectives with management history. Recognize patterns of similarities as well as differences with the present management theories. Evaluate new management techniques, how the new techniques are have evolved, or is there any kind of relationship of new techniques with the past. Evolution of management perspectives with contextual factors. We will also see historical management approaches, whether they are relevant till date. However, changing business environment demands evolution of management practices. Organizations succeed if they adapt to change. So, there is a need to understand the history of management because the management practices which were used in the past are still today today some practices are relevant and some practices however have evolved with the changing times. Learning from the past success and failure will help in improving the current management practices. So, forces which have led to the evolution of management thought. Studying history does not just mean arranging events in chronological order or arranging them in the sequence of order or sequence of events. It means developing an understanding of the impact of external factors or forces which have influenced which have resulted in the development of all these theories. To understand relevance of management in the past, why management concept was relevant, how it was relevant in the past, what led to the evolution of management, what led to the formation of the principles of management, followed by discussion on the evolution of management. We all know that the great monuments are testimony to the fact they are still the monuments which were built several years ago. They have used lot many resources, they have used a large number of resources in terms of land, capital, labor and number of years to construct those monuments. The examples would be, I would like to quote, the Egyptian pyramid and the Great Wall of China. They are proof that projects are of tremendous nature, employing tens of thousands of people, were completed in ancient times. In India, we have Taj Mahal and the other historical monuments. Those monuments were built several years ago, centuries ago, but still they are existing. So, it gives us an understanding that those monuments were built, they were the large projects and they were built with the help of people using different resources, land, capital, machinery to construct those monuments. Who has helped? Were they not the workers? The answer, or were they not the managers? Yes. To answer this, we would like to see if the principles of management still existed while construction of mega projects in the ancient times. Then we will discuss about Adam Smith. In 1776, Adam Smith published a book, Wealth of Nations, in which he argued that the economic advantage that organizations and society would gain from division of labor. All the work that was carried out was based on the principles of job specialization or division of labor, that is, breaking down jobs into narrow and repetitive tasks. The wealth of nations gave emphasis on the concepts of division of labor and job specialization. Further, in 18th century, when machine power was substituted for human power, a point in history known as Industrial Revolution, it became more economical to manufacture goods in factories. It was possible to have large number of products and produced in factory. Efficient factories needed someone to forecast demands. Then arose the need for demand forecasting, how much of resources to produce, how many products to produce, how to manufacture goods, how many people to assign a particular task, direct activities and so forth. That someone was a manager, then came the concept of who the manager is, how the manager's role has been defined. With this background, we would learn about the evolution of management thought. So, management thought, as these examples have given us a glimpse of, the concept of management existed in the ancient times, and there is an evolution of the principles of management over a period of time. These principles are still existing, and we would like to see the evolution of management thought from 4 different perspectives: classical, behavioral, quantitative and contemporary management perspectives. Classical approach existed from the year 1890 to 1947, the era in which the significant contributors of the classical approach were scientific management proposed by Frederick Winslow Taylor and Frank and Lilian Gilbreth, Henry Gantt. Bureaucracy was given, the concept of bureaucracy was given by Max Weber. Administrative theory concept has been given by Henry Fayol. The behavioral approach, which existed in the year, proposed in the year 1930s to 50s, in the era of 1930s to 50s, they emphasized on human relations movement, proposed by Elton Mayo, human resource management perspective, Abraham Maslow and Douglas McGregor. Behavioral science perspective, proposed by Mary Parker Follett. Quantitative approach to management in the decade of 1940s to 50s. Operations, the major highlights were operations research, operations management, total quality management. Ishikawa, Joseph Juran and Edward Deming were the proponents of quantitative approach of management. Contemporary perspective was proposed by Chester Barnard, who gave systems approach to management and the contingency view of management. So, this era was present from 1960s to date or till date. The contemporary perspectives of management has been is existing. So, classical management perspective, we will discuss about the major highlights of classical perspectives. Each contributor or proponents of classical management perspectives we will study in details. The early study of management began with classical or historical perspective. It emerged in the time period of 19th century and early 20th century. Perceived organizations and jobs as machines. In this time period, organizations and jobs were perceived to be like a machine or the machine metaphor of organizations, and workers were considered to be cogs in the machines. They emphasized on rational and scientific approach to management at work to improve efficiency and performance. The major contributors of classical management perspective, scientific management and general administrative principles. The organization was perceived to be or having a mechanistic perspective. So, the proponents of this theory perceived overall the organization as a machine, and workers were just cogs in the machine, or workers were considered to be tools who can be optimally utilized to get maximum benefit for the organization to attain goals. Factors for evolution of classical management perspective. Factory system of 1800s. They were the reasons, as earlier discussed, the industrial revolution, which brought in the concept of factories or large number of factories, production was possible because the manufacturing was happening, manufacturing took place in the factories, caused problems of organizing tasks with large or mass production. There were problems associated like organizing tasks, training employees, scheduling complex operations, predicting demand or forecasting demands, dealing with labor dissatisfaction and strikes. In the industrial revolution or in the manufacturing, when the manufacturing capacity improved, these were the problems which the companies, which the organizations, manufacturing units of the organizations encountered. Efficiency, of course, improved. Production, there was mass production. People were working on a routine type of task which led to decline in, or which led to monotony and boredom. Further, which led to dealing with labor dissatisfaction. So, the issues were dissatisfaction of employees, strikes started occurring very fast. So, as a result, these which led to there should be some kind of management concept. There should be somebody to organize tasks in order to have or to overcome chaos in the workplace. There need to be some principles which can put people in order, people and resources in order. So, the concept of management evolved. Increasing challenges of organizing, coordinating and controlling large number of people and increasing worker productivity led to evolution of modern management with the classical perspective. So, classical management perspective can be broadly categorized into scientific management and general administrative theory. Scientific management proponents are Frederick Winslow Taylor. In the year 1911, he proposed this theory of scientific management. Time and motion studies was proposed by Frank and Lilian Gilbreth. General administrative theory proposed by Henry Fayol. Theory of authority structures and relations or bureaucracy, bureaucratic organizations were proposed by Max Weber. So, classical management perspective, the scientific management proposed by Frederick Winslow Taylor in the year 1911. He is called the father of scientific management. He published a book, Principles of Scientific Management. The major highlights or contributions of scientific management is work is done based on the principles of science. Scientific selection, training and development of workers. He proposed that the work or the task carried out in the organization should be done, there should be some principles of science in order to have maximum production and minimum of fatigue. Scientific selection of workers. Workers need not be given tasks as per the convenience of managers. There should be a proper method of selection, training and development of workers. Standardization methods to be used, or there is emphasis on one best method of doing the job. Productivity increased with selection of right person on the job with correct tools and equipment. The right selection or selection procedure was given more emphasis on selection tools or selection method, scientific selection of workers, allocation of responsibilities to the individual based on his or her skill type, and also allocating tasks to an individual with correct tools and selection of correct tools and equipment. Division of labor, providing an economic incentive to the workers, economic incentive. So, incentive system was also given emphasis, incentive to increase production or to motivate workers. Further, time and motion studies proposed by Frank and Lilian Gilbreth. Contributions of Frank and Lilian Gilbreth, optimum utilization of labor. So, the classical management perspective or more or less the scientific management focused on optimum utilization of labor, reducing fatigue and improving performance or efficiency of workers by elimination of wasted motions. So, they carried out an experiment of bricklayers. They observed the bricklayers they observed an experiment. In that experiment, they found that there were several wasted motions of hand and body movements or motions which can be eliminated in order to improve performance. So, they designed an instrument called microchronometer to observe the hand and body movements of an individual which could not be could not be otherwise observed through naked eye. So, through the observation of hand and body motions from microchronometer, they found out an optimum utilization of the human resource, optimum utilization of labor by reducing the wasted or eliminating the wasted motions. Henry Gantt came up with another concept of scientific management. Gantt advised an incentive system which was earlier proposed by Frederick Winslow Taylor. Incentive system to improve worker efficiency. Created a graphical chart known as Gantt chart, which is a famous chart which is proposed by Henry Gantt for managers as a tool for planning and controlling their work, planning, controlling and scheduling work. Gantt chart shows the relationship between work planned and completion of the task with reference to passage of time. So, classical management perspective, the learning outcomes, steps in scientific management, steps carried out by the scientific management, develop a science for each element of the job to replace the old rule of thumb methods. So, they proposed that there is science in every activity performed, there is science in every job, or find out how scientifically we can perform a job. Scientific selection or selection of employees and training employees to improve performance on the job. Supervise employees to make sure that they follow the prescribed methods for performing the jobs. The supervision of employees is also important in order to see that they perform the respective assigned task. Continue to plan the work, but use workers to get the work done. So, they emphasized on planning, scientific selection of jobs, scientific selection of employees, use of science in job and supervision of employees. The learning outcome 2 is replacing rules of thumb with science or organized knowledge, obtaining harmony in group action rather than discord. So, they also emphasize that there should be harmony in groups, achieving cooperation of human beings. The employees can perform efficiently if there is cooperation, there is harmony in the group, within the group, rather than chaotic individualism. To avoid discord, to avoid conflict, harmony is important, cooperation is important, working for maximum output rather than restricted output. They emphasized also on how to improve productivity. Improving productivity, developing all workers to the fullest extent for their own as well as the company's benefit. So, the major highlights of principles of scientific management is organized knowledge, harmony or group work, cooperation of human interdependence of task, emphasis on productivity and development of employees or development of workers for organizational performance as well as for the development of individuals. Scientific management, in a nutshell, we can say the general approach to scientific management developed a standard method for performing each job. There is a standardized method. So, they have emphasized on standardization of task, selected workers with appropriate abilities, selection of employees based on their abilities for each job, trained workers, training is also given emphasis, trained workers in standard methods, supported workers by planning their work and eliminating interruptions, provided wage incentives to workers, incentive system was brought into use and for increased output. Contributions of scientific management is demonstrated the importance of compensation for performance. Compensation for each performance initiated the careful study of tasks and jobs, demonstrated importance of personnel selection and training. Criticism of scientific management, they did not appreciate the social context of work and higher needs of workers, did not acknowledge variance among individuals, tended to regard workers as uninformed and ignored their ideas and suggestions. So workers the workers were just merely considered as tools, or they were not, their ideas were ignored, their ideas and suggestions were not taken by the top management, did not acknowledge variance among individuals. All individuals were treated at par. They did not appreciate the social context, the influence of environment and needs of workers and higher needs of workers. So, these were the major drawbacks or criticisms of scientific management. Do we really think scientific management is applicable today? Application of scientific management in the present context. Analysis of basic work tasks to be performed. Yes, scientific management is applicable even today. The standardization of tasks is something which we still carry out. Time and motion study to eliminate wasted motions, or to reduce human fatigue and improve performance, time and motion study is still in use. Hiring the best qualified workers for a job. So, we have a selection technique. The selection technique should match or to help organizations identify the best worker or the best talent in the industry. Design incentive system based on an output. Incentives are still given to the individuals based on the performance, or performance based incentive system is still applicable today. Standardization, or one best way of doing job. So, these practices are still present in the present management perspective. Further, we will discuss about general administrative theory of management. Administrative theory of management, the bureaucratic organizations. The concept of bureaucracy was proposed by Max Weber, a German theorist who introduced the concept of organizations. Many European organizations were managed on a personal, earlier the organizations were managed on a personal or family type business. Employees were considered to be loyal. Employees were loyal to an individual rather than the organization or its mission. So, organization, the concept of organization was, it was an individual would be the owner of the organization and people were loyal to that person rather than being loyal to organization and its collective purpose. Weber envisioned organizations that would be managed on an impersonal or rational basis. The proponent or the Max Weber gave a concept called bureaucratic organization. He redefined the concept of organization, where he envisioned that organizations would be managed not on a businesses or should not be run by an individual, but organizations would be managed on an impersonal or rational basis. So, he discussed about a logical approach of working in an organization. Bureaucratic organizations, he gave a term called bureaucratic organizations. Bureaucracy is based on rational authority, rational or logical approach to management, rational authority and continuity due to formal structure. He proposed that an organization would be a kind of organization should have a formal structure, arrangement of tasks, Rationality means employee selection and advancement is based on their competence and technical qualification. Employees should be selected. What was proposed by the scientific theory has been also adopted by the bureaucratic organizations. They emphasized on scientific selection of employees and advancement or career advancement to be based on competence and technical qualification, assessed by examination or according to training and experience. An individual will be selected based on his or her professional competence, on his technical abilities, and the advancement, career advancement in the organization should be solely based on the experience, training and observation of his or her performance. The organization relies on rules and written records for continuity. There must be some formal rules and regulations to guide the behavior of employee in the organization. Written records in order to maintain continuity in the organization. A clear division of labor. They emphasized that there is a need for division of labor which arises from the distinct definitions of authority and responsibility. Division of labor based on work specialization, and they also propose that the authority, the individual should be given, employee should be given some authority or power based on the position. Along with power comes responsibility. The individual having authority or power is also responsible towards the organization. So, positions are organized in a hierarchy with each position under the authority of a higher one. Positions in the organizations, they are in a hierarchical order with each person, each position under the authority of a higher order or higher manager. General administrative theory or administrative theory of management in the features of bureaucracy. In order to maintain order within the organization, a bureaucracy should have certain elements like division of labor. As we earlier discussed, division of labor based on specialization of tasks. So, jobs are broken down into simple, routine and well defined tasks. Simple tasks which are routine and repetitive in nature and which are well defined. So, the person who is working on those tasks becomes more efficient, more specialized by working every day. Authority is the next element which says that positions organized in an organization in a hierarchy with a clear chain of command. Authority is the power given to an individual based on his or her positions, and positions are organized in a hierarchical order with a clear chain of command. The third element is formal selection. So, the selection of individuals for different jobs are based on their technical qualifications, based on their experience. The fourth point is formal rules and regulations. Systems of written rules and standard operating procedures. There should be the formalized rules and regulations in an organization which can guide individuals' behavior. Systems of written rules and standard operating procedures. The fifth point is impersonality. Uniform application of rules and controls not according to personalities. So, they emphasized on uniform application of rules and regulations in order to maintain equity and justice or fairness perception within the organization. There should not be any kind of biasness and not biasness based on the individuals or personalities. Uniform, it emphasizes on a uniformity in rules and regulations and control, and it is not based on the individuals or individuals' closeness to the power center. Career orientation. Each individual or the individuals who work in an organization should be given career advancement based on the performance. Career orientation talks about managers are career professionals, not owners. Every employee or a manager working in the organization is a part of an organization, and they seek the career enhancement. Career professionals, not they are not owners of units they manage. The organization is just they are working as an in the organization as any other employee. So, application of bureaucracy is bureaucratic principles of management are still applicable in the contemporary organizations. Bureaucracy has taken on a negative meaning in today's organizations. However, though the bureaucratic principles are bureaucracy is the concepts of bureaucracy is still applicable in the present context of management or in the present contemporary business organizations. However, there are certain there is a negative connotation accorded to the concept of bureaucracy. It is associated with endless rules and regulations. It is also considered to be excessive red tapeism. Too many rules and regulations will lead to sometimes inefficiency. So, on the flip side, rules and other bureaucratic proceedings provides a standard way of dealing with employees. Everyone gets equal treatment and everyone knows what the rules and regulations are. People's behavior is guided and there is very less chance of deviating from the rules and regulations. However, it also there are and it also helps enables organizational efficiency. So, administrative principles, another major subfield within the classical perspective is known as administrative principles approach. If scientific management focused on productivity of the individual worker, administrative principles or administrative approaches focused on the entire organization. So, with this we would conclude this lecture, the first half of scientific management, administrative theory of management, and in the next lecture we will discuss about administrative principles proposed by Henry Fayol.